Let's dive into the Book of Esther this time.
Sounds good.
It's a story full of palace intrigue, set in the Persian Empire, and a plot that could wipe out an entire people.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And you've given us some really interesting stuff to work with this time.
I try.
Especially this study guide.
Yeah.
Estudo do Instituto Bíblico do Brasil.
That's a good one.
Someone was ready for a serious deep dive.
It's a fascinating choice, that study guide.
Yeah.
It really digs into the structure and theology of Esther.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people miss.
Yeah, most folks just think of it as like a, beauty pageant story.
Yeah, the typical Sunday school version.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so much more going on under the surface.
Yeah, and that's what makes this deep dive so exciting.
Exactly.
We get to unearth those hidden layers and connect them to the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's start with the basics. The study guide emphasizes the importance of understanding.
Yes.
The historical and cultural context.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like the king's over-the-top feast that lasts for 180 days.
Right. It wasn't just about having a good time.
180 days?
Yeah.
That's like a 6-month party.
It was a power move.
Oh, wow.
King Ahasuerus was showing off his wealth and dominance to everybody in his empire.
Wow.
It was a way of saying, look at me, I'm in charge.
So when his queen, Vashti, refuses to appear at his command,
big deal.
it's a huge deal.
Enormous.
Yeah.
This source explains that women in ancient Persia, especially in the royal court, were expected to be totally subservient to men.
Right.
Vashti's defiance was like a slap in the face to that whole system.
And it leads to her being dethroned, right?
Yep. Which sets the stage for our heroine, Esther.
A Jewish orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai, who's suddenly thrust into the spotlight.
And she's keeping her Jewish identity secret, remember?
Talk about pressure.
Yeah, big time.
It's like she's living a double life. This has recipe for disaster written all over it.
Well, the disaster comes in the form of Haman.
Okay.
He's the king's right-hand man.
Right.
And he's got a serious chip on his shoulder because Mordecai refuses to bow down to him.
Mordecai, the devout Jew, standing up for his faith.
Yes.
Even though it puts him in danger.
Absolutely. And this is where Haman's true colors show.
Okay.
He's not just annoyed, he's consumed by rage.
Hold on. The study guide mentions some historical context here.
Okay.
Something about Haman being a descendant of the Amalekites.
Exactly. It goes way back, centuries of conflict between the Amalekites and the Israelites.
Oh, wow.
Haman's hatred for Mordecai isn't just personal. It's fueled by this ancient animosity.
So he takes it out on the entire Jewish population.
You got it.
Wow.
He convinces the king to issue a decree to exterminate all the Jews in the empire.
This is...
It's chilling. It's a chilling reminder of how prejudice and hatred can lead to horrific acts of violence.
This is where the story takes a dramatic turn, right?
Absolutely.
Mordecai learns about Haman's plan.
Yeah.
And immediately goes to Esther, pleading with her to use her position as queen to intervene.
Right.
That's a heavy burden to place on someone.
It is.
Especially considering the risks.
Right. Remember, approaching the king without being summoned was punishable by death.
Unless he extended his golden scepter.
Exactly. It was a life or death gamble.
So what does Esther do?
She shows incredible strength and wisdom.
Okay.
Instead of rushing in blindly, she calls for 3 days of fasting and prayer among the Jewish community.
That's a powerful detail.
It is.
It shows how deeply her faith is intertwined with her actions.
It's not just about political maneuvering. It's about seeking divine guidance and strength in a moment of crisis.
Then she puts on her royal robes. And approaches the king.
Talk about a nail-biting moment.
Oh, I bet.
And the king extends his scepter.
Phew, what a relief.
Right.
But she doesn't just blurt out her request, does she?
Well,
the study guide talks about Esther's strategic approach.
You're picking up on those key points.
Thanks.
She invites the king, and surprisingly, Haman, to a banquet.
It's like she's playing a high-stakes game of chess, carefully planning her moves.
And she understands the importance of timing.
Yeah.
At the second banquet, she finally drops the bombshell.
Okay.
I am Jewish, she says, and Haman is plotting to kill my people.
What a powerful moment. I can only imagine the tension in that room.
It's a turning point in the story, and it sets the stage for a dramatic confrontation between good and evil.
So the king is faced with this shocking revelation. His beloved queen, the woman he chose, is part of the very group that Haman has marked for death.
And remember, he doesn't even know at this point that Mordecai, the man who saved his life, is also Jewish.
Oh, right. The study guide points out how that detail hangs over the whole story.
Yeah.
Like a ticking time bomb?
Exactly. It's a brilliant use of dramatic irony. We, the audience, know the truth, but the king is completely in the dark.
Which makes his rage all the more powerful when he finds out.
Absolutely. The king is enraged on 2 levels.
Good.
First, that someone would plot against his wife and her people.
Right.
And second, that he was about to reward the villain while the true hero went unrecognized.
So what happens to Haman? I'm guessing it's not pretty.
Not pretty at all. The king orders him to be hanged on the very gallows Haman had built for Mordecai.
Oh, wow, that's some serious poetic justice.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if Haman realized the irony of it all as it was happening.
It's a classic example of hubris, isn't it?
Yeah.
Haman's ambition and thirst for revenge blinded him to the consequences of his actions.
He thought he was in control, but ultimately his own evil plot backfired.
But here's where things get complicated. Even though Haman's gone, the decree to exterminate the Jews is still in effect.
Can't the king just undo it?
The study guide explains that according to Persian law, a royal decree was absolute. It couldn't be revoked, even by the king himself.
So the Jews are still in danger, even with Haman out of the picture.
That's the cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
But the king does what he can. He issues a new decree granting the Jews the right to defend themselves.
It's almost like a preemptive self-defense law before those were even a thing.
Exactly. And it leads to a dramatic showdown on the 13th and 14th of Adar, the dates Haman had chosen for their destruction.
Which is where we get the Festival of Purim, right?
You got it. Purim meaning lots, because Haman cast lots to choose that date.
Oh, okay.
It's a celebration of survival, a commemoration of how the Jewish people fought back and overcame their enemies.
The study guide has a whole section on Purim.
It does.
Thinking out how it's more than just a party.
Absolutely. It's a time for reflection, for remembering the fragility of life and the importance of standing up against injustice.
It's also interesting how the Book of Esther never explicitly mentions God.
Right.
Yet the idea of divine providence is woven throughout.
That's one of the things that makes this book so thought-provoking. It invites us to look for those subtle signs of divine intervention even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty.
Like Esther being chosen as queen at just the right moment.
Right.
Or Mordecai happening to overhear the plot against the king.
Right. Were those just coincidences, or was there a higher power orchestrating events behind the scenes?
That question of fate versus free will is something the study guide really digs into.
It suggests that both are at play. Human beings make choices, but God can use those choices and even the actions of evil people to accomplish his purposes.
So maybe it's not an either situation, but rather a both hand.
Exactly. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of the study guide, the character analysis.
Okay, let's talk about Esther. The study guide challenges the idea that she's just a beauty queen.
Right. She's beautiful, yes. But her true strength lies in her courage, her wisdom, and her unwavering commitment to her people.
She's thrust into this incredibly difficult situation, and she rises to the challenge.
She uses her intelligence and charm to navigate the treacherous world of the Persian court.
It's like she's playing a high-stakes game of chess, carefully planning her moves and anticipating her opponent's reactions.
And let's not forget about Mordecai. He plays a pivotal role as Esther's advisor and confidant.
He's the one who encourages her to reveal her Jewish identity, even though it puts her life at risk.
He also recognizes the danger posed by Haman and helps Esther develop her plan to expose him.
So both Esther and Mordecai take enormous risks, driven by their faith and their determination to save their people.
And their actions ultimately change the course of history.
It's a powerful reminder that even ordinary people can make a difference in extraordinary circumstances.
And that even in the darkest moments, courage and faith can prevail.
Now, the study guide poses some really thought-provoking questions about the deeper meaning of the Book of Esther.
Yeah.
Things like, what does it teach us about God's providence, even when it seems hidden?
It also asks how we can apply the lessons of courage and resilience to our own lives today.
And how the story challenges us to stand up against injustice and prejudice wherever we see it.
Those are questions that resonate across centuries, aren't they?
They definitely make you think about the bigger picture.
And that's one of the things I appreciate about this study guide.
Yeah.
It doesn't just retell the story, it challenges us to grapple with its deeper meaning and connect it to our own lives.
It feels like we could talk about the Book of Esther for hours.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much to unpack.
Definitely.
But you mentioned earlier that
Right.
Estudo do Instituto Bíblico do Brasil
Yeah.
offers a unique perspective. What else did you find intriguing about this particular source?
One thing that stood out to me was how the study guide
Yeah.
breaks down the narrative structure chapter by chapter.
Okay.
It highlights the careful way the author uses literary devices, like foreshadowing and irony, to build suspense
Right.
and convey a deeper message.
So it's not just a historical account.
No.
It's a skillfully crafted work of literature.
Absolutely. The author knew exactly what they were doing.
Really?
And this study guide helps us appreciate those subtle details.
Can you give an example?
Well, take the scene where Mordecai overhears the plot against the king.
Okay.
It seems like a random event, right?
Yeah.
But the study guide points out how this seemingly insignificant detail foreshadows Haman's downfall.
Because Haman will eventually be hanged on the gallows he intended for Mordecai.
Exactly. The author plants that seed early on.
Right.
So when it comes to fruition, it has even more impact.
It's like those aha moments you get when you reread a book
Right, yeah.
and notice something you missed the first time.
Exactly. And the study guide is full of those kinds of insights.
It also delves into the theological interpretations, right? We talked about divine providence, but this source goes even deeper.
Right. It explores the idea that the Book of Esther, despite not mentioning God directly, is actually a profound reflection on the nature of faith in a world where God's presence often feels hidden.
So it's about trusting that God is working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it.
Exactly. It's about holding on to hope, even in the face of danger and uncertainty.
The study guide also raises some interesting questions about the role of human responsibility.
Yes.
Like if God is ultimately in control, why do Esther and Mordecai have to risk their lives?
Right.
Why doesn't God just intervene directly?
Those are tough questions, and the study guide doesn't offer easy answers, but it does suggest that perhaps God chooses to work through human agents, empowering us to participate in his plan.
So it's a partnership in a way.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not about passive waiting, it's about active engagement.
It also makes the story more relatable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we all face challenges in our lives where we have to make tough choices, and we may not always see God's hand at work.
But the Book of Esther reminds us that even in those moments, we can choose to act with courage and integrity, trusting that God is with us even if we can't see him.
One thing I really appreciate about Estudo do Instituto Bíblico do Brasil is how it doesn't shy away from asking tough questions.
It's true. It doesn't just give us pat answers. It invites us to wrestle with the text, to search for deeper meaning, and to connect it to our own lives.
And it ends with a whole section of questions for further reflection, right?
Yes, questions that really challenge you to think about the implications of the story.
Like what?
Like, what does the Book of Esther teach us about the dangers of prejudice and the importance of speaking up against injustice? How does it challenge our understanding of God's role in history, and how can we apply its lessons to our own lives today?
Those are powerful questions.
They are.
And I think they're especially relevant in our current world where we're facing so many challenges.
Absolutely. The Book of Esther may be an ancient story, but its message is timeless. It's a story about courage, faith, resilience, and the enduring hope that good will ultimately triumph over evil.
And it's a story that continues to inspire and challenge us centuries later.
So to all our listeners out there, I encourage you to pick up the Book of Esther and read it with fresh eyes. Let the study guide be your companion, guiding you through the text and helping you unlock its deeper meaning.
Who knows? You might even discover something new about yourself in the process.
Because, as we've seen today, the Book of Esther is more than just a historical account. It's a mirror reflecting our own struggles, our own hopes, and our own potential for courage and faith.